Welcome to Formula Drift Insider. I am your host Ryan Sage, and on this week's episode we digest the last round in Texas and we'll have our number 4 moment in the 10 years of Formula Drift. First, let's take a look at the last round of competition at Texas Motor Speedway. A new event in a new market that most definitely was one of the craziest rounds of the year. The track ended up being the fastest ever in the circuit, and it provided for many memorable battles as well as some controversy. First, I wanted to touch on the controversial side of things. At this event, for the first time all year, we saw a record number of protests with respect to judging. There were actually 6 that were lodged and 2 that were deemed valid. Formula Drift rules state that judging protests can only be made on non-subjective items in judging, not an opinion on which run was better. So a 0 that was not accounted for or a strike that was missed are examples of non-subjective items. Now, the protest rule has been around for years, but it's only been this year that teams have really used it more frequently. Why? Well, we now have items in judging that we have deemed to be objective, such as what specifies or equates to a 0. In the past, these things were not so numerous, and so there was very little that could be shown to be objective rather than subjective. Agree with these layers of criteria or not, creating specific things that can create a 0 most certainly have contributed to the frequency of protests. And I think it is from this that we can learn valuable lessons on what direction we should go moving forward. I, for one, am okay with getting rid of protests purely for the reason that they stop the show and it hurts the overall experience. With that being said, I don't fault teams that protest. They are just using the rules that are there for them. It's now for the series to determine what can be learned from all of this and how our goal should be a clean, exciting, and well-crafted show that also gives drivers a platform to feel like each time they get to the line, they're getting a fair shake. And also that the fans get the best performance from the drivers and thus the best show. With that said, let's look at our first validated protest. Bakis and Nishida. On the very first run, Odi runs a very nice line with great angle, but Robbie is right there all the way. The judges score it even. On the second run, Odi follows Robbie deep into the touch and go area and drops 2 tires, giving himself a 0. Robbie drops 1 tire, giving himself a strike. The judges give the win to Robbie. Odi's team lodges a protest on the basis that Robbie had not 1, but 2 strikes. 1 for the tire drop and another for hitting a course marker in the touch and go area. Upon review of the run, the judges saw that Odi's team was right. And because both drivers were even in run 1, and now both had 0s in run 2, it must be a 1 more time. They did run again, and Robbie ended up winning. Our next validated protest was the most consequential, as it actually overturned a result. Gittin Jr. versus Patrick Mordaunt. On run number 1, Vaughn runs a pretty good lead line, consistent with how he'd been running all night. But Pat, on the other hand, was really able to stay with Vaughn, much to the surprise of a lot of people. It was quite impressive given how fast Vaughn's car is. Pat did have a few mistakes in the chase, and Vaughn overall had a decent advantage in run number 1. Run 2, we see Pat coming down the front straight, initiating, Vaughn following. He straightens very quickly, reinitiates, and closes the door on Pat, who runs shallow on the touch and go area. Vaughn comes close to contact with Pat and is on his inside door where he almost comes straight, then pulls inside again and stays close to Pat all the way around the outer zone. The judges initially gave Vaughn the win. Following the run, Pat's team protested on the basis that Vaughn straightening and reinitiating between clip 1 and 2 was a 0 by the standard created by the judges. Since straightening is considered non-subjective, it was considered a valid protest and therefore reviewed. All 3 judges agreed that Vaughn did straighten after a review, and because that equated to a 0, and Pat did not have a 0 in run number 1, the call was overturned and Pat granted the win. Vaughn's team argued that Pat was the one that caused Vaughn to straighten, based on his line and speed in the lead position. The judges did not agree that that could be proved, which is the standard that was created after the June Mang and Tony Angelo controversy in West Palm Beach. For the lead driver to be at fault for a mistake by the chase, it has to be proven. And on that basis, Pat's entry speed and his speed in the touch and go area were consistent with what he had measured in qualifying and prior runs. The judges had no provable evidence that could validate Vaughn's argument. Vaughn and his team still felt that Pat's line and speed choked him up in that area, and that is what caused the straightening. Whatever side you go with, nonetheless, it was a sad moment for the event, because literally we came to a standstill as this situation had to be resolved. Unlike Odie's case, where we had plenty of time due to where we were in competition, in this case, we were going right into the Final Four, and the window was very small. If we can learn anything from this, it's that if protests continue, there needs to be a way where it does not detract from the competition and the show. And the series has the responsibility to take this task head on and fix it. I don't like seeing results overturned, but I also don't blame teams for using the system that they are given. Well, while this moment was the biggest spectacle of the event, 3 drivers were fighting for a win: Matt Field, Chris Forsberg, and Michael Essa. Forsberg had been driving like a madman the whole event. Mr. Consistency made one mistake the entire time, but along the way, he beat Pollock in an awesome battle to watch. Then he came out and took out 2011 champ Daijiro Yoshihara, and finally he beat the much talked about Patrick Mordaunt to take 3rd place. Matt Field really came into his own this event and beat the super stylish Forrest Wang. Then he went on to beat Robbie Nishida, who was blistering fast all weekend, and finally, he too also beat Patrick Mordaunt. That sent him to the finals to face Michael Essa, who has been on absolute fire. Essa was able to beat Field in the finals. He also captured the lead in the series as we head into Irwindale. Congrats to all the drivers who did so well. Here's a look at the standings as we edge ever so closer to the final event of the season. Finally, today we give you our number 4 in the top 10 moments in the 10 years of Formula Drift. Formula Drift has grown to become a global brand. Events and demonstrations have taken place from Panama to Canada and from Qatar Racing Club to the beautifully crafted Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi. But if there is one area in the world that has taken to Formula Drift in a huge way, that is Southeast Asia. So much so that Formula Drift has a separate championship run in this region, aptly named Formula Drift Asia. The series has visited Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and now even covers Australasia with a new event in Melbourne, Australia. To be blunt, the series is massive in Asia. Broadcast live on Fox TV, the series regularly sees viewership of around 30 million. To put this into perspective, that is more viewers than a single American Idol. The countries in Southeast Asia have been so welcoming and so accommodating that no venue or public arena has been inaccessible. In fact, Formula Drift Asia has competed on the famed F1 Singapore street course and in downtown Kuala Lumpur at Merdeka Square, a place of pride for Malaysia. To that end, the international events and FD Asia find home at number 4 on the top 10 moments in the 10 years of Formula Drift. Well, that is it for this episode of Formula Drift Insider. As always, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, if you'd like to ask me anything, drop me a note right here. Until next time.